Monday to Friday at 12:30 p.m. only on Bloombergquint.
We choose Ambani by ourselves, the Reliance Group, the Ambani family. We did it. We are also looking at other partners. We have already 30 partners which are not Reliance, so it's not only Reliance. We have about 7 years to perform our offset. During the first 3 years, we are not obliged to say with who we are working. We have already settled work and agreement with 30 companies, which represents about 40% of the total offset obligation we have by contract. Number one was a contract with 126 aircraft, among them 18 to be produced in France, and then a progressive license with not only HL, but many companies around to be able to produce. How many hours to produce a Rafale by Indian companies compared to a Rafale produced in France and this and that. Then you have the cost of the labor on this. 36, the price of the 36 was exactly the same compared with the 18 flyaway. You compare flyaway to flyaway. 36 is double than 18, so as far as I was concerned as Dassault, it should have been the double, including the price. 36 aircraft to compare with 18. But because it was a G2G government, there were some negotiation, and then I had to decrease the price of 9%. So the price of Rafale in flyaway condition is less expensive in the 36 contract than it was in the 126. No, not at all. We have a long experience with HL. What was difficult in that deal to be negotiated was two matters. One was a responsibility not only of the first aircraft, because it was a kind of license. So you got 18 aircraft flyaway, meaning is produced here in France, and then step by step a license production through HL, because HL was the lead production agency. The question was at that time, and many discussions we had, is how many hours HL should take compared to the number of hours Dassault is taking in France. It was an issue. And the second issue was the responsibility. Should I be, as Dassault, responsible for 126 or only of the beginning of the production? Because at the end, for example, if you take the last aircraft, the 126th aircraft, totally manufactured by HL, HL should take the full responsibility in front of Indian Air Force. These were two issues. First, delivery to Indian Air Force is going to take place next year in September. So in 1 year, as per contract, it's totally in time.
Critics of the Rafale deal have been given two sets of explanation in the last 2 days. The latest has come in the form of a nearly 40-minute interview that Dassault Aviation CEO Eric Trappier gave to news agency ANI. A day before that, the government of India submitted a response to the Supreme Court where the process before the deal for 36 Rafale fighter jets was inked is laid down. Now, do these details that have been revealed adequately answer questions raised over the Rafale deal? To speak on this, I'm joined now by Ajay Shukla, a columnist in strategic affairs, defense and diplomacy at the Business Standard, and someone who's been following this deal very closely. From the Congress party, we're joined by Mohammad Khan today, a spokesperson of the Congress that has consistently been questioning the Rafale deal, and Gopal Agarwal from the BJP also joins us today. Welcome to all of you. I'm going to start with Mr. Shukla. Ajay, you have been scathing in your responses to the ANI interview that Eric Trappier gave. In fact, you put out your own list of questions that you believed weren't asked. Now, he does answer most of the criticism leveled against Dassault and Rafale in the deal, doesn't he?
No, he doesn't. First of all, he's the wrong person to be asking these questions. If you want to know whether a shop has overcharged you for a particular item, you don't go and ask the shopkeeper. You compare with alternative sources of procurement, with other places from where you get similar equipment, or with purchases made earlier from that same source. Now, all these options were available, but the interview seems to have just asked him this question about whether it was extra charged, and not pressed him at all on the issue of comparing with other sources such as the 126 aircraft deal that Dassault had quoted for earlier. Now, this is basic journalism, so I think that in that sense he was the wrong person to ask, and the questions were not pressed adequately, and the sort of the alternative viewpoint was not presented to him, and he was not made to comment on it.
Okay, so now let's leave that aside, because beyond a point, it may not be fair to critique someone's editorial judgment. Let's come to the crux of the matter, Ajay, which is that the questions that have been raised in the Supreme Court petition on one end, the questions that the opposition is raising on the other, it seems to come down to a lapse in process. Now, let's come to what the government has said in the Supreme Court, where they go through the entire process that has been followed. And the only question then remains that, is it okay for the deal to have been announced by the Prime Minister a whole year and 4 months before it was finally inked, and then all the processes followed that announcement? Isn't that the crux of the entire debate now?
No, that is one important aspect for sure. But your assumption that all the processes were followed is not correct, because what the government appears to have decided was that the process for getting clearance, for example, every process of acquisition of military equipment starts with a statement of case and a request from the user service. Now, this was not done. The Air Force was required to initiate that request right from the word go. But the government seems to have decided that the MMRCA process had already included that. The Air Force had made its request for Rafale fighters, and therefore they didn't need to go through that process again. But that's an essential part of the defense procurement process, and that should have been done.
You've also reported, Ajay, that the aircrafts, these 36 aircrafts per aircraft price is about 40% higher than what the price was for the 126 fighter jets. Now, of course, the actual price from the government has not been revealed. But according to you, has enough reasoning been given for why these may have cost more? Because the government in its submission also talks about inbuilt cost escalation, because the deal, the earlier 126 aircraft deal, took so long to complete.
That is one aspect. Escalation, but escalation does not account for the 40% change. At the most, it accounts for 10%. The real issue is that in deciding to shift from 126 aircraft to just 36 aircraft, you are amortizing the costs incurred on development of those India-specific enhancements and so on, which were earlier being amortized over 126 aircraft. You are now amortizing them over just 36 aircraft. So they become 3 times more costly. This is something which, a basic student in defense procurement understands, but the government of India doesn't seem to have understood this point. And so it's ended up paying more. Now, what Trappier has said in the deal is he's not given any figures or anything. He's just made one bland statement that we gave it at a 9% discount. But the critics have argued, and myself included, with detailed figures and detailed costing, and none of that seems to have been put to Trappier, and Trappier has not responded to any of that.
Okay. Ajay, do stay on with us for as long as you can. We're speaking to Ajay Shukla as he's waiting to catch a flight, but we hope he can stay on for longer. Let me now come to the BJP and the Congress on more details of this. Now, Gopal Agarwal, the questions that have been raised over Rafale have not yet been answered in full. Why is it that your party seems to depend on Eric Trappier to take the tough questions on the Rafale deal?
No, but actually the defense deals have some sort of secrecy with regard to public discussions. But as far as the court is concerned, the information has been given about the price, the process, everything is now clarified. And we have to also look into the matter that the issue, if it is taken up like that, the level of defense procurement would have been, the situation of defense procurement would have been what it was for several years. That the deal started negotiation in 2001, and finally in 2012, after almost 11 years, the deal went back again to the starting point. And what happened to 126 aircraft? Nothing. So if as the Congress says that they have had finalized things on a different level, they should have gone for that procurement.
That's a very broad response. That's a very broad response, Mr. Agarwal. Let me come in to you with a specific question. The question is about process being followed, and this is now what the government of India has said in the Supreme Court. I'm referring to para 23 of that submission, where the government seems to say that the background of the case was brought to the notice of the DAC, which is the Defense Acquisition Council, where it was mentioned that operational capability of 36 Rafale aircraft will be in accordance with the SQR, that is the requirement for the procurement of the MMRCA. Put simply, the government relied on the same process which was followed for the 126 aircraft, said we've already followed all those processes, so we don't need to do it again, and applied it to the same 36 aircrafts. That's the understanding from the government submission.
Yes.
Then in that case, how can you claim that these 36 aircraft have enhancements that the 126 didn't? And when, as per your government submission, per your government submission, when in May of 2016 you withdrew the RFP for the 126 aircrafts, that means that deal is dead. How can you then rely on the process that went into that 126 aircraft deal and just transport it to the 36 aircraft deal?
No, but these are the part of the same aircraft. The specifications of basic aircraft is same. It is only the additions or the weaponization of that which has been taken, increased in this 36 aircraft. So what the government has said, that the basic process of SQR and DAC mentions that those processes, basic processes with regard to the specifications have been undertaken already. So it is the government decision that they have relied on that basic process. Otherwise, that's what I'm telling you. If you go into the whole process again, as has been mentioned by the UPA in 2012, that the whole process should restart, we should restart the negotiation. So it will again go into a tailspin of 11 years. So this is the process under which government said that we needed the procurement of this aircraft at an urgent basis. And therefore, the process of even government-to-government procurement was followed. And if I tell you some of the figures, even over the last several years, 40% of the procurement has been done through intergovernment agreement.
Yeah, that's there in the submission to the court. And I don't think the fact that it was an IGA is under contention. The government has
already,
Okay, let me come to Mohammad Khan.
But the issue is that if government, just 10 seconds more.
Okay.
If the government says that it has relied on the earlier SQR process, that shows that it has relied on it. There is no question of discussion.
But are you buying
that.
the same thing? Are you buying the same thing? Okay, I'm going to come back to you on that question.
No.
Take it to Mohammad Khan. Mohammad Khan, the fact is that they have responded with their process to the Supreme Court. Eric Trappier has said again and again that everything was above board. He has responded in this interview to ANI specifically to Rahul Gandhi's claims that he's a liar and said that I'm not a liar. If I was breaking the law in my country, I would be in trouble. Do you really have enough to go on to keep beating this Rafale drum politically?
Absolutely, Tamanna ji. I'll tell you why. First of all, there's a fundamental principle of law. The person who is accused of a crime, his statement doesn't carry much weight. Of course, he will claim innocence. Of course, he'll say whatever he has to deny your charges. But on a lighter note, if it was true that the Modi government was purchasing these jets for a substantially lower price, I promise you this much. The Modi government would never have let you or I forget it. Forget secrecy. They would have taken out banners and hoardings and declared that they have done this. Now, there are a number of things which are contradictory with regard to the Modi government's approach to the Rafale deal. You have Subhash Bhamre coming on the floor of Parliament a year before Mr. Modi goes to Paris, and he gives the price per aircraft on the floor of Parliament, their Minister of State for Defence. He doesn't invoke any secrecy clause. After that, Mr. Modi goes there, makes this announcement. Mr. Parrikar, who is the sitting defense minister, is completely unaware of any such plan. He is asked by your colleagues in the media, and he says, I didn't know about this. This was a unilateral decision taken by Mr. Modi. Number three, we find out at a later date, we keep asking them about price, and suddenly, after Bhamre's statement in Parliament, the deal has become secret. Now, we keep asking them. They refuse to divulge, claiming national security. We find out from Rafale's annual report, this gentleman who sits here and talks about being above board, his annual report gives the price per aircraft. And that's how we first realized that the government is paid significantly more. We turn to them in Parliament. We say, look, you can tell us this. And Macron comes to an Indian channel, gives an interview and says, of course you can discuss it with the opposition. There's no secrecy there. They say, no. They manufacture the secrecy clause. Number two, here's the other allegation. The first allegation is they bought fewer planes for a higher price. And here's the second, more damning allegation that the man who said, na khaunga, na khane dunga, Tamanna ji, he directly engaged in this deal to benefit his crony capitalist friend, Mr. Anil Ambani. That is our accusation. And we rely on the following pieces of proof to substantiate it. Number one, Mr. Anil Ambani's company is formed 15 days before the announcement. He seems to be in possession of some sort of insider information about what is going to transpire. Two, his company has no qualifications in this space other than a proximity to the Prime Minister. Three, he gets a largest share of the offset contract, 30,000 crores. They've published their annual statement and laid claim to that. Number four, HAL, which is an 80-year-old company, which Mr. Trappier has gone on record to say he looks forward to work with whom Mr. Trappier has inked an agreement on 14th March 2014, saying that they will work together, suddenly has forgotten. So of course there is a question
so let me tell you about HAL. Let me tell you about HAL and what Trappier said, because this is it's a complex story, and all the pieces need to be put together. So in the interview he says that he was okay to work with HAL, but in the 126 aircraft deal there was a problem of responsibility, and he says that very specifically, explains it, that we didn't want to be responsible apart from the 18 aircrafts we were supposed to deliver in flyaway condition, and plus whatever we were in the process of helping out with, we didn't want to be responsible for the last 126 aircraft that HAL would have produced on its own. The deal at that time was asking us to be responsible for it, and we reached a dead end, and that's why that ended. That is his explanation. I just want to come to Ajay Shukla quickly, if I still have him on the line. Ajay, do I still have you on the line?
Yes, you do.
Okay. I just want to ask you about two things. One is that, is there a scam? And I use that word carefully because it's used very loosely now, but the opposition seems to suggest that there is corruption involved, there is crony capitalism involved. And the second part of my question is in regard to the choice of ADAG Group. Trappier says they don't know how to make aircrafts. I do. I bring that in. They are an Indian company and they have land, etc. That's why we chose them. Beyond a point, can we question his choice of offset partner if he has the right, as per the terms of the deal, to choose whomsoever he wants?
I think that, I will not directly answer your question about whether there is a scam, because the matter is before the Supreme Court, before the CAG. They are better qualified to decide whether there is a scam or not. The question of crony capitalism is a more I would say, a realistic question, because crony capitalism, let's remember, is not a crime. It's just a bad way of doing business that destroys confidence in the existing systems and structures. I would say on the face of it that there is no reason for Dassault to select the Reliance Group. There's no conceivable reason. There are many companies that have land. There are many companies that have. When a foreign aerospace vendor is looking for an aerospace partner to build aerospace structures in India, there are many other options available other than Reliance. There are companies that have been supplying for years to Boeing, to Airbus, to Sikorsky, to sort of BAE Systems, and they have a perfect record of delivery, of on-time delivery, of quality control, and so on. Why on earth would anyone believe an argument that I chose them because they had land? And the question of land is itself a very fraught one, because that land is still, there are questions over that land. When it came into being, when it was bought by the Ambani Group and so on, the timelines don't add up. So, I would say that there is a need for this to be explained properly. And until it is explained properly, the questions will continue to be asked about crony capitalism. Because, Dassault has to answer the question about why it chose the Ambani Group.
Gopal Agarwal, I want to come back to something you said a little while earlier, where you admitted, and it actually says in the government submission, that the SQR, which is basically the process which determines what you want in that deal or in that aircraft, that was required for 126 aircraft. That process, which was done for 126 aircraft, was considered by the NDA government for the 36 aircraft deal. Now, why would you do that? Especially when you claim that these two are not the same or the exact same aircrafts, number one. And number two, you go back and say that they messed it up, they took too long, but you are in a sense relying on the process they undertook. If this is a new deal, shouldn't there be a new process?
No, Tamanna, what I'm saying is that the government has very specifically said in the Supreme Court is that the due process and the legal process with regard to defense procurement, with regard to procurement of Rafale aircraft has been followed by the government. Now, all the other questions are generally based on speculations. And this is also a media report that government has relied on this. There is no clear-cut clarification on this. So the issue is that how many questions you can speculate on anything, but how many questions you can answer on speculation. The fact of the case is that the government thought it urgent, required 36 aircraft, and earlier it was only 18, so they wanted a larger squadron of aircraft, and then earlier deal went through, could not be finalized because it took 11, after 11 years also that deal was not finalized. What were the reasons? That is for the Congress to answer. But do our country doesn't need these aircraft? First question. If our country needs this aircraft, and the government is well within the process negotiating it and buying it through intergovernmental process, removing the middleman. It is now, people were saying that they have not disclosed the price. Even the government has given them into the Supreme Court in the sealed envelope. So now if you question or anybody questions on speculation basis, so anything can go on. But we should understand the level of defense procurement in the country was so bad that stages have come in the country where our military people, army men had to fight on the higher echelons of Himalayas without even proper shoes. That was the way our defense procurement is. If you go by in 2014 or 15 with the statements
I just want to come in on that. I just want to come in on that. Mr. Gopal Agarwal, you are claiming that the NDA government has, or you seem to claim that the NDA government has shortened the defense procurement process. It was taking too long earlier. But in this entire submission to the court, again and again, the government says that they relied on DPP 2013, which is the defense procurement process as of 2013, which was formulated under the last government. So how have you changed it? If you're relying on the same process, you need to follow the same process. You can't take shortcuts.
So that is what the the government is never saying that they have taken a shortcut. They have followed the process as is laid down in 2013 defense DPP 2013 process. Government is categorically saying we have followed the process. Whatever is mentioned in that process, it has been done. The process was followed at the last level, and in the end it was declared because of as an intergovernmental purchases because government wanted to remove the middleman. Second thing is the opposition is only questioning on offset clause. We are forgetting that the offset clause is everybody said that there are 120 vendors in the offset clause and Reliance is one of them. And Reliance is not getting 30,000 of contract as what is being mentioned by the opposition. It is getting only part of that, and that too in the phases. So why we are forgetting another 119 people? Why we are forgetting that HAL itself withdrew from the offset clause or supplying of the
that question to Mohammad Khan. He claims that the 30,000 crore rupee you're talking about is untrue, that there are 180 offset partners. Why are you focusing on just one? Backed by also the situation, which is in fact true, that India was and is in urgent need of these aircrafts.
Mr. Agarwal says that the 30,000 crore offset contract is not true. Well, I hate to burst his bubble, but Reliance Infrastructure has tweeted, well, not tweeted, but they've put out their annual report in which they have said, and I quote, to kick off this project, our subsidiary Reliance Aerostructures has formed a joint venture company with Dassault Aviation. The joint venture shall facilitate the transfer of high-end technology while discharging offset obligations of rupees 30,000 crores. This is the lion's share of the contract, Gopal Bhai. Reliance themselves is acceding to it. How can you turn around and try and rewrite the narrative? I was surprised when Ravi Shankar Prasad came out and lied to the nation and said that the Congress also had Reliance as a part of the original deal. He knew that was Mukesh Ambani's Reliance, but he lied bald-facedly to the nation. That was when I knew you guys know that the jig is up. Number two, look, Mr. Shukla has masterfully summarized all the points for you. It's a fact. It is a scam. It looks like a scam, it smells like a scam, it walks like a scam. They are reluctant to reveal the price.
Mohammad Khan, you're misquoting Mr. Shukla. He is no longer on the phone line with us, but to the question of scam, he specifically said, I will not comment on it.
The facts, and I'm saying my point
he
is
said the question of crony capitalism is important, which is not illegal.
I said Mr. Shukla has summarized the events, so to speak, the conclusion that we are drawing based on the facts available, and we are making this accusation with full responsibility, is that it is a scam, and that is why the Prime Minister is so petrified to talk about it. Why are they avoiding a parliamentary inquiry? When Dr. Manmohan Singh was faced with a challenge in the coal matter, he offered to carry out an inquiry on the floor of Parliament. Number two, these people went to the CAG in the 2G case and used the CAG report to take before the Supreme Court. Yet when we go to the CAG, they suddenly get nervous and say, no, come to the Supreme Court. So I am telling you, Tamanna ji, whether it is a question of crony capitalism, which is proven by the fact, and Mr. Shukla pointed out to you, Mr. Trappier in a previous interview to another channel said that the reason we chose Reliance was because they had land. But the land in question was allotted much after that decision was made. So clearly this is a retrospectively manufactured narrative. So all of these reasons, there are several actually, you can debate this for an hour. There are lies upon lies which have come untrue. Francois Hollande's statement where he says that they were compelled to take Reliance as a partner. It was made a precondition of the deal. What dog does he have in the fight? He has no reason to lie. No, he didn't take it back. He didn't take it back. He didn't take it back. I am sorry, he didn't take it back.
Then he took it back. No, so that was strange as well, because he said something and then he changed it. Let me come to Gopal Agarwal with the key thing. Why not allow a parliamentary inquiry and let it be done once and for all, Mr. Agarwal? If there's nothing to hide, then go ahead with the process. Go ahead with the process and then don't let this bog you down anymore, because there are key questions to answer. Why 36 instead of 126? If it was so urgent, where are the aircrafts? Why ADAG? Were offset rules changed previous to this? Why did you use an SQR for the 126 aircrafts when you scrapped the deal essentially? Why was the announcement of the deal made 1.5 years nearly before the deal was actually inked? Should the whole process of it going to the CCS, etc., have happened after the announcement in France by the Prime Minister? These are key questions. Open it to inquiry and let it be answered.
Okay. Tamanna, I would like to say three, four points. The first important point is 126 aircraft deal, which was negotiated earlier, was scrapped by the UPA government themselves. It is not that our government has scrapped, but they themselves said that we need renegotiation. What are the reasons? Mr. Anthony will tell.
That is factually untrue. That is not true. The government submission, sorry, I'm just coming in because the government submission in the Supreme Court as of Monday, and para 18 is what I'm referring to, says the RFP withdrawal process was initiated in April of 2015 and was eventually scrapped in June 2015. Yet it was still relied on.
Although the defense minister, the defense minister himself said that we need renegotiation. They did not. Mr. Anthony himself in 2013 himself said that we need renegotiation. He did not go for that deal. The second important point was that HAL itself refused to go for that procurement, and the Dassault had not given the service guarantee which was expected of total 126 aircraft. The third important thing was that people were saying that the due process was not followed, that the government has put up, the whole process has been followed, and that has been submitted to the Supreme Court. Now it will decide whether the due process was followed or not. The fourth was the price disclosure. And government said that we cannot disclose in the public, but they have given it to the Supreme Court. That also settled. The last question was of the offset clause. Government, that is between Dassault and the private factors, and this offset clause, Dassault has to choose.
I understand that, Mr. Agarwal, that it's supposed to be between Dassault and whoever they choose.
Yes, on the JPC, I will Not JPC, I will tell you. Earlier, when we asked for a JPC in 2G spectrum case, that was the Supreme Court has passed strong strictures of corruption under the UPA, and after that, the government wanted this process. It was under the supervision of the Supreme Court that the process of investigation was, SIT was formulated, a process of investigation was taking, and Supreme Court was finding strong evidences against the UPA government of manipulating things, and the facts were quite out in the public domain. The changing of the date, suddenly asking for a draft. Here, everything is on speculation. So on a speculation,
it's on speculation because you won't reveal the facts.
Go for a JPC.
Yeah, okay. My question to you, Mr. Khan, is that when there is no clear evidence as of now of any kickback, of any corruption, and no real serious misconduct which has come to the fore, how are you going to convince voters that this is a huge issue with the Modi government?
Tamanna ji, we have found in the 4 states that are going to election where Rahul ji has been campaigning, this issue has really picked up resonance. We find that the average person understands that this man, the Prime Minister, who claimed to be a model of probity, the man who claimed that na khaunga na khane dunga, has been less than above board. The common man understands that 30,000 crore rupees have been taken from a government company and given to a private company who has no experience in this sector. The common man understands that the Prime Minister has bought fewer planes for a higher price. In fact, we credit them with a far greater understanding of our nation's politics, and we know that this is going to become a bigger and bigger issue. In fact, Tamanna ji, the dismissiveness and the desperation with which the BJP has been trying to bury the issue right, speaks volumes. If the BJP had nothing to hide, I promise you on the very first day they would have disclosed it on the floor of Parliament. Why would they want to escalate the conflict? The very fact that they've tried to suppress it in Parliament, they have lied in press conferences, they've lied repeatedly in statements, shows you that they are trying to hide something.
Is there corruption involved, and if so, what are questions which I think people will still need clearer answers to?
Yes.
Well, clearly the Rafale controversy is not going anywhere, though there have been two sets of explanations. Will the critics buy it, and will voters as well? Remains to be seen. Thank you so much, Mohammad Khan, Gopal Agarwal, and of course Ajay Shukla for joining us today.